production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, an Auburn professor says U.S. country of origin labeling laws haven't harmed Canadian and Mexican cattle imports.
In southern gardening, pruning isn't magic, regardless of Gary's hat.
In the Food Factor, we'll have some tips to keep food poisoning from sacking your game day party.
In the markets, a strategy on new crop soybean sales, especially if your acreage is increasing. And still, not a lot of cattle available to put in our nation's feedlots. John Michael Riley has analysis.
In the feature segment, the National Cornhusking Contest. It reminds us of how growing food was once an arduous task done mostly by hand.
Years and years ago, that's how corn husking began, was you had corn in the field, you needed to pick it. It was done by hand. It wasn't done by a $300,000 combine. It was done by hand and a team of horses or mules.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week.
A university researcher says that country of origin labeling has not adversely affected trade with Canada and Mexico.
Leighton, cool is where the origin of an ag product is placed on the package. Sometimes it's voluntary, sometimes it's mandatory. It's generally supported by United States agriculture, but not by countries who want to import their ag goods here. Auburn University ag economics professor C. Robert Taylor says he found no difference in the pricing of imported cattle before and after cool was implemented. Taylor made the statements on the AgriTalk radio show produced by Farm Journal. Taylor based his conclusions on the mandatory price reporting data that packers provide to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Taylor said that for most of the categories of slaughter cattle, the basis actually narrowed between imported and domestically produced cattle under cool. Some have criticized Taylor's study, saying it picked only the years with data friendly to cool. Taylor responded saying that when you lengthen the time period studied, the significance of cool disappears. Taylor said a Canadian study which showed damage to Canadian cattlemen by cool is based on private data that was unavailable to him.
Most of us believe any activity related to trees is considered a forestry practice. But there's also an arboriculture which specializes in tree care, pruning, and growth in urban and residential areas. Farm Week's Amy Taylor reports from the annual meeting in Meridian of the Professional Arborist Association of Mississippi.
The craft of arboriculture is important to our communities because trees help generate clean air, add to the landscape, and can even serve as a utility function. Mississippi State University Extension Service forestry specialist Jason Gordon says trees increase the value of residential properties.
Younger trees, but also, as you would imagine, the older trees, the trees that are fully filled out and mature, add value to properties, to real estate values. People tend to pay more. One of our number one issues as far as arboriculture is people take a tree that is not the right kind of tree for a certain type of place in a yard, for example. And so there's different climatic variations and issues that you have to think of as well. So that's what we call right tree, right place.
Professional Arborist Association of Mississippi President Archie Dickens says it's important to be proactive by knowing what potential danger signs to look for in your trees.
There's key indicators that you can look for that are flags, if you will. Fruiting bodies on a tree, mushrooms, seeping fluids out of the tree, hanging dead decayed limbs, roots protruding from the ground. Those are some of the key things that an arborist can look for, or anyone could look for.
The Professional Arborist Association of Mississippi offers training and resources to professionals who cultivate trees. From Meridian, Mississippi, I'm Amy Taylor reporting.
You can get in touch with the Professional Arborist Association of Mississippi through their website. That's paam-ms.com. The association also has a Facebook fan page. We'll have their links on our Farm Week website and Facebook page.
Those interested in commercial grape and muscadine production should consider attending 2 short courses to be offered this year in Mississippi. The Mississippi State University Extension Service is offering 2 short courses at 2 locations in February and August. These short courses are designed for commercial growers or those who wish to become commercial growers. They are not designed for hobbyists. Both short courses will have hands-on training in a vineyard. The August short course will build on the information from the February one. In Hattiesburg, the first short course will take place on February 19th and the second on August 13th. The Hattiesburg short courses take place at the Forest County Extension Service office. In Verona, the first short course is February 26th and the second August 20th. The Verona location is the MSU North Mississippi Research and Extension Center. There is no cost, but you must pre-register. We will have a link on our Farm Week website and Facebook page. The first short course will cover topics like variety selection, irrigation, trellis options, and pest management. The August short course will cover harvest, fruit processing, marketing, and grape economics.
The day the Super Bowl is played, many of us will head to parties with friends and family. In this week's episode of The Food Factor, Natasha Haynes of the Mississippi State Extension Service tells us how to keep foodborne illness from throwing us for a loss.
Drop that wing! Holding onto food too long at unsafe temperatures, 15 yards. You can win the hostess game by following a few food safety tips. Serve cold foods on ice and hot food over a heat source. For parties lasting several hours, serve only what is needed and replace often so foods are kept at proper temperatures. Don't add fresh foods to serving dishes that have been sitting out. Prepare smaller serving dishes that can be brought out at intervals. Don't make food more than a day or 2 in advance. Provide a spoon with your dips to encourage guests to put the dip on their plates instead of using chips or veggies they've handled. You can score a touchdown as the perfect party hostess and shut out foodborne illness. It's time to make healthy food a factor in your life.
For some healthy snack ideas to take to your next game day party, visit the Mississippi State University Extension Service Pinterest page.
Well, most of us have avoided pruning a tree or shrub because we were afraid we would damage it. In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman shows us pruning isn't a dark art if you know the basics.
Many gardeners think that pruning is some sort of dark magic that only the experts can practice successfully. Today I'd like to share some advice on taking the mystery out of pruning. I receive a lot of calls this time of year with questions about pruning trees and shrubs. It comes down to technique and tools. Bypass pruners, loppers, and even a pruning saw are essential. Deciduous shrubs like these lantana will tolerate hard pruning, which is also called renewal pruning. Once these plants have gone dormant, use your bypass pruners or loppers and cut all the stems back to within several inches from the ground. New growth will shoot up when the warmer weather of spring arrives. When pruning trees, use your bypass pruners or loppers for branches smaller than 1 inch. Make the cut close to the branch collar, which is the swollen area where the branch and trunk meet. Pruning larger branches can result in the weight of the branch tearing the bark down the tree. For these branches, use your pruning saw and the sequential 3-cut method. First, make a cut about 12 inches from the trunk on the bottom of the branch about halfway through. Second, from the top, cut through the branch a couple of inches beyond the first cut. Third, remove the remaining stub cleanly at the branch collar. It doesn't require magic for proper pruning, and you get healthier plants. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Leighton Gary says buy high-quality pruning tools if you can. They will work better, making you more likely to undertake pruning in the first place. In our feature segment today, we'll travel to the National Cornhusking Contest. It's a reminder of how labor-intensive food production used to be. Time now for the markets with Leighton. And I've been traveling, been seeing diesel prices. You say the U.S. average price for diesel is at a 4-year low?
You're correct. Not since late 2010 has the U.S. average for diesel dropped below $3 a gallon. It's $2.93 now. A welcome break certainly for agriculture and other users of diesel fuel. Speaking of fuel, some analysts say that the outlook is not good for corn ethanol. Also in the market, U.S. chicken production was up in December, while this month's cattle on feed report gets a negative response when first released. Some cancellations of U.S. export sales have put the soybean market in somewhat of a negative mindset as we produce Farm Week on Wednesday, as farmers perhaps ponder whether to go ahead and pull the trigger on any new crop bean sales. Analyst Dan Huber offers this advice.
At a minimum, if you don't feel comfortable with it, at least go in with some puts. Keep a floor underneath of there. Granted, we've got 30 days from now. We'll be pretty well established on what the spring price will be for your crop insurance. There we have another foundation to work with, but absolutely, particularly for anyone who has increased their acreage, I think you want to have those locked in. I mean, if you're gonna put extra acres in for economics, well, take advantage of the economics.
The latest figures for ethanol from corn show an uptick in U.S. production this month. However, analyst Ted Seifert says he expects this trend to come to a halt pretty quick. Here's Ted's explanation of what's going on with ethanol usage of corn.
Now that corn prices have come up and crude oil prices have come down, profit margins are under a bit more pressure, and you're starting to see stocks build pretty significantly. So we're not really that far away from hitting capacity of storage for ethanol. Once we hit that number, you'll see ethanol production drop pretty dramatically. And if crude oil prices stay very low, it's going to be very difficult to find E85 demand. It's going to be very difficult to increase the blend. So ethanol going forward really depends on crude oil prices, and at the moment, that outlook is really not very good.
Turning now to forest products, a new paper mill in southwest Mississippi is yet another step closer to reality. The North Carolina-based Vandrell Company held a groundbreaking in Natchez for its future paper machine facility. The $100 million investment will create at least 100 jobs. Vandrell makes towel, tissue, and dispenser products for commercial distributors. Well, this takes us to our trivia quiz. This week it's about row crops in the state, and here is the question for you. How does Mississippi rank nationally in its acreage of corn for grain? Is the answer A, number 5, or B, number 13? Is it C, number 17, or D, number 19? I'll have that answer at the end of the markets.
We're going to pause for a short break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll look at the calendar and the rest of the markets. Leighton Span reports that the U.S. poultry supply is up, while the demand picture is cloudy for cattle. In the feature segment today, do you have what it takes to harvest corn by hand? Find out at the National Championship.
Committed? Absolutely. People rely on me. I don't take that lightly. Sure, sometimes we get out of sync and things feel forced. That's when the commitment kicks in. You buckle down, hammer it out, and keep it together for everybody involved. So, yeah, I'm completely committed to my marriage. Till death do us part. Commit to your marriage.
Before we get back to the markets, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. A one-day workshop on wild hog damage management takes place Monday, February 9th. The location is the Grenada County Extension Service office on Fairground Road in Grenada. The hours 8:45 a.m. to 2 p.m. Registration is $20 and that includes lunch. You'll learn about wild hog biology, behavior patterns, and how to trap them. You'll also hear about wild hog diseases and the implications for humans and domestic livestock. Continuing education credit is available for foresters and logging professionals. The annual meeting of the Northeast Mississippi Fruit and Vegetable Producers Association takes place Thursday and Friday, February 12th and 13th. The location is the Lee County Agri Center on Highway 145 at Verona. The educational conference will feature speakers speaking about their own experiences. Commercial exhibitors will be on hand as well. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
Sales of four-wheel drive tractors in the United States were down 26% year over year in 2014. That fact makes the news out of John Deere headquarters recently. Really no surprise. That company is laying off over 900 people at ag equipment factories in Iowa and Illinois. The layoffs begin in early February and they are termed indefinite. Well, U.S. chicken production took an uptick in the month of December. According to new USDA figures, total production in that last month of 2014 totaled 3.3 billion pounds. That represents an increase of 8% from the same month a year ago. As for weight, the government says all chickens averaged 6.09 pounds per bird in the month of December. Lingering questions about demand for beef cast a bit of a cloud over what appeared to be a positive cattle on feed report. Extension Ag economist John Michael Riley shared his analysis with me when we talked on Tuesday.
John Michael, one quote I saw about the on-feed numbers, they lean to the friendly side. Is that true, in your opinion?
It was perceived as a bullish report. You had a number of cattle placed on feed during the month of December, just over 1.5 million head. The market was thinking that number was going to be closer, a little over 1.6. So a larger than expected reduction in the number of cattle placed on feed during the month of December. Everybody thought that was going to be bullish. The other two numbers, the marketing's number and the total inventory, was right in line with expectations. So of course, everybody thinks we're going to have a bullish report. And of course, the market reacts just as it has here recently, kind of opposite of what you think it should be doing. And it was down on Monday as a result of outside market pressure. That's kind of the going story here. Is just there's nothing fundamentally within the cattle market that explains the drop that we've been seeing in the recent weeks, but that the report continued to show that, but the market obviously reacted negatively.
But the best we can say, just outside market influences.
I shrug my shoulders sometimes, but I mean, it has a lot to do with falling oil prices and competing meats, expected pressure from competing meats. And it's on the cloudiness that continues to hang over beef demand.
And kind of the bottom line, I mean, we still have a continued tight supply of available cattle when it's all said and done, more or less.
Right. Like I said, fundamentally, there's nothing in the cattle market that really explains it. Tight supplies, beef demand, throughout 2014 was very robust. We're expecting that to continue. A consumer confidence number this morning that was well above expectations, a really strong report, the strongest since August of 2007. So we're starting the year off on the right foot, but the markets just aren't quite ready to put the money where the mouth is. That's right.
Okay, they're not ready to be on the bandwagon. I think I saw where Allendale maybe noted this was the smallest placements figure in like 5 years. I mean, a little bit out of the ordinary.
Smallest since 2009, the third smallest on record since '96. So again, we're just continuing to write the storylines here that we don't have a whole lot of cattle available to be put into feedlots.
So obviously with that kind of picture, no rush for sure to liquidate cattle by any means, probably in a majority of cases.
That's the $20 million question there. Obviously, I think the market continues to show strength and potential strength throughout 2015.
Before our feature story, let's check the trivia answer for this week on Farm Week. The correct choice is D. Mississippi is ranked number 19 in the country in its acreage of corn for grain.
We show a lot of combines, hay balers, and cotton pickers on Farm Week. effortlessly harvesting their chosen crop. We forget how hard and time-consuming food and fiber production used to be. We take you today to last fall's National Cornhusking Contest. Husking is the old term for harvesting by hand. The national contest was revived in the year 2000 after a 60-year lapse. Prior to World War II, it attracted hundreds of thousands of spectators, a show of appreciation for those who did it. Market to Market's Paul Yeager attended the latest championship held last October.
In a scene resembling a Norman Rockwell painting, people from all over the country gathered in Iowa for a competition rooted in hard work. Honors were bestowed on the best competitors, but the real prize was awarded to everyone, as spectators witnessed a chore from the past that helped shape the legacy of the American farm. Cornhusking contests began in the 1920s. Agricultural pioneer Henry Wallace was concerned that the strong work ethic was eroding from Midwestern life. So he invited farmers to a field near Alleman, Iowa, to see who could husk the most corn in a single day. That inaugural competition attracted only 3 contestants, but the event quickly grew in popularity. By the end of the decade, corn husking was a burgeoning national sport, with no less than 9 states hosting competitions. Interest in the events grew steadily through the 1930s, and by the 40s, crowds numbering in the tens of thousands were on hand for the Super Bowl of corn husking contests, simply called the National. In 1940, Davenport, Iowa attracted the largest crowd for the Corn Husking National. 116,000 spectators, nearly twice the population of Davenport itself, gathered to watch Irvin Bauman of Illinois pick 46.6 bushels, almost 2 tons, to win the coveted prize. With the onset of World War II, corn husking contests came to an abrupt end, and by the time the weary troops returned, rural America was in the throes of dramatic change. The same industrial buildup that enabled the Allies to defeat the axis of evil was making its presence known down on the farm. The result? Farmers did more work with fewer people. America shifted from an agrarian society to one forged by industry, and millions of people pulled up roots and moved to densely populated urban cities in a mass exodus from the heartland. Hoping to preserve the history of harvesting corn by hand, Dave Vandenboom brought the contest back to Iowa in 2011. And to remain true to the competition's heritage, the only other laborers in the field were draft horses.
Years and years ago, that's how corn husking began, was you had corn in the field, you needed to pick it. It was done by hand. It wasn't done by a $300,000 combine. It was done by hand and a team of horses or mules.
In October, the rolling hills near Iowa's historic Amana colonies hosted the National Corn Husking Championships. And 5,000 fans gathered to watch 140 competitors, the most in the history of the contest, tried their hand with the husking hook. For some, it was a trip down memory lane. Others marveled at the labor-intensive method of harvesting, and some were just plain curious how such an event held a century ago drew thousands to the fields. While the objective is simple, to compete at the national level is not easy. Contestants try to husk the most corn during a specific amount of time, typically ranging anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes. In corn husking's heyday, however, the national lasted 80 minutes, and there were no breaks. Trailing behind the husker is the gleaner, who picks up corn missed or dropped by the competitor. For every pound of gleanings recovered, 3 pounds of corn is deducted from the total weight. The harvested corn is judged for cleanness and uniformity. Deductions are imposed for excess husks.
We weigh out 20 pounds of corn, and anything that has shucks left on it, that's a deduction from their score, because, you know, when they were doing this by hand, any corn shucks you had took up space in the corn bin.
And when the dust finally settled, Frank Hennepin of Illinois emerged as the 2014 National Corn Husking Champion.
Well, you can watch this story on the National Corn Husking Contest on our Farm Week website. That's farmweek.msucares.com. You can also watch Farm Week stories on our Farmweek USA Facebook page and YouTube. We'll have a link to the Market to Market website so you can see the original story as well as read the script. Now, there are state contests as well as the national one. The national contest is held the third weekend of October. It will be in Indiana this fall. We'll also have a link to the contest website. That's www.cornhusking.com. And Leighton, maybe I need to try that. But it is a reminder, when you think about harvesting a whole field of corn by hand, that was just the way it had to be done because the machines did not exist. So we didn't have to harvest corn. We can go and buy a can tonight. So it's just an indication of how far things have come, and we need to appreciate that. Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, high tunnels.
These greenhouse lookalikes allow growers to earn more by harvesting earlier in the spring and later in the fall. It's local food that lasts longer.
In the food factor, slow cookers. They work while you're doing something else.
For easy cleanup.
And in southern gardening, Gary says you don't have to be a mad plant scientist to know how plants work.
For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artist Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.